I don't know if you guys can see it at all, but I decorated. My whiteboard has little leaves all over it. Welcome back to the channel. Hi everyone, I'm so glad to see you. If you are a returning viewer, I'm so glad you're back. If you are a new viewer, my name is Cameron. I make videos about reading and books and reading culture and a lot of stuff like that. And every month I do a breakdown of what I read in the last month. So, spooky season is officially over. So, we're gonna talk about all the things I read in October. It was both a productive and not so productive month. I don't know how to communicate that a little bit better, other than I did not read my 50 hours. I try to read 50 hours every month. Did not hit that this month. I hit 45 hours, but I read 31 books. How did I do that, you may ask? It's because I read a lot of graphic novels and manga, and I can just fly through those. So that'll affect a lot of my stats. I also find that I read much faster when I'm like borrowing a book and I like feel a pressure to return it. Whoa, that was a cool trick. Yeah. Yeah, so it was just kind of a weird month. So as always, let's go over stats first, and then I'll kind of discuss some of my favorites, some of my least favorites, stuff like that. So this month, like I said, I read 31 books. 4 of them were audiobooks. So pretty happy with that one. And I think I read 19 graphic novels or books. I don't really know for sure. I think I read 19. So do that math, because I don't want to. I'll make editing Cam do it. But yeah, 31 books finished, which is crazy. 45 hours read, which I was not hugely happy about, but I did read 6,031 pages. That's a whole lot. Because I read graphic novels, and like I said, I read graphic novels, as I assume most of you do, read graphic novels significantly faster than like books where it's entirely words. So my pace was way faster than it normally is. I sit normally around the 120 to 130 pages an hour a pace, but this month my pace was 223.5 pages an hour. So much, so fast, so much. My best day read, I read 963 pages and I read 201 minutes. I don't know if that's a combined day. It's kind of like best day for each of them. For all I know, the 201 minutes read might have been me just listening to an audiobook all day. And then on a separate day, I read like 4 graphic novels, which resulted in 900 pages. I don't know. Maybe I should check that, but I don't know off the top of my head. So yeah, those are the stats. Feeling both encouraged and discouraged, because 31 books is a lot of books, even if you're like adding in graphic novels. I also read more graphic novels in this month than I have in the last 2 years. So that definitely like inflates numbers, but I don't know what is happening to me. I am just having the hardest time hitting 50 hours of reading every month. And I'm sure some of you are looking at me being like, 50 hours is a ridiculous number of hours to read in a month, especially with how quickly I read. I can finish a 300-page book in like 2.5 hours, generally speaking. So I don't know kind of what I'm expecting myself to do, because realistically I have to read at least an hour and a half every day to hit 50 hours. I think I'm just putting a lot of expectations on myself that are not necessarily, I don't know if they're not realistic, but like I'm an adult, I have a full-time job, I also do this on the side, and so I'm editing for an additional several hours a week. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself for no reason. Maybe I felt like I would be better at hitting 50 hours every month. You know what I mean? But I do want to say that last month I hit 184 books read this year, which is right on track with, I say kind of because I don't love setting like book number goals most of the time, but there is a little part of me in my brain that really wants to get to 200 books this year, and I do think it's achievable. Fingers crossed. I don't know if I'll have a month as good as October again this year. Who knows? November and December are big holiday times, so maybe I will. But yeah, so we'll see. Regardless though, pretty happy with hitting almost 185 books finished this year. I am currently reading my 185th and 86th. So fingers crossed, you know? Now, let's get into my goal books. So every month I set a goal for myself to read a classic work, a translated work, and a nonfiction book, and I kind of blew all of those out of the water. I think I read 5 classic books, and I read a whole lot of translated works, at least 10. So anyway, we'll get into those. But let's chat. Okay, so the classics I read. I am currently working my way through the Anne of Green Gables series, of which there are 8 books. I read the 3rd and 4th. I finished the 3rd and 4th this month, which is Anne of the Island and Anne of Windy Poplars. Loved Anne of the Island. Windy Poplars is interesting because it, like, in the actual timeline of writing, was like the 7th or 8th written. And it was written like 20 years after the 3rd book. And you can definitely tell a difference between the author's like writing. I don't know, it did feel a little out of place, Windy Poplars did, but I didn't dislike it. It just felt different than the other 3 books I've read. But I have put a hold on the library for the 5th one, so I'm currently waiting for that. Pretty excited. What are you doing? The baby boy is here. But yeah, so I read 2 of those. I read The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. It's the first Ursula K. Le Guin book that I've read. You wanna get over here? It's the first Ursula K. Le Guin book, and she is a classic, just a classic sci-fi and fantasy writer. Where are you going, dude? Ugh. Okay, and of course Ursula K. Le Guin is a legend, primarily in the fantasy, because she wrote Tales of Earthsea. But I read The Left Hand of Darkness by her, which is one of her more famous sci-fi works. Really enjoyed it. I thought it was so interesting. The book was written in like the 60s, and there's a lot of like exploration about gender and like cultural relativity and stuff like that. And the main character is an anthropologist. So it's interesting to kind of write from an anthropologist's point of view. I just really thought it was good. So will you knock it off? But yeah, that one was the one I read. And then I did a video last week about the like classic spooky books that I want to read. And I did take the time. What the heck? But I didn't count it in my reading stats, but I did take the time to read The Telltale Heart because it's only like 4 pages long, and I thought it was very good. And then I also read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which is closer to like 50-ish pages, I think. Hold on. My son is the bane of my existence. Oh my god. Okay, they are being rowdy. Okay, but I did read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I thought it was very good. I guess I knew more of the story than I thought I did. I still enjoyed it, but I don't know, it was just a very quick read. It was a good time. If you're interested in any spooky reads, even though I know spooky month is technically over, you can always be spooky. Fall feels like the spookiest season, so you can still be a little spooky, but both of those were very good. And then the last one I read, I finished it on Halloween, and it is Perfume by Patrick Susskind. That was a cool book. It's about a guy who's born with like a really powerful nose and like can smell people really well and like starts murdering people to collect their smell so he can make it into a perfume. It is really good, really innovative. I really haven't heard anybody talk about this. I learned about it from the book Leonie. She read it several months ago now, and I was like, that's a cool concept, let me read it. And I was very pleasantly surprised. I don't know if I thought I was gonna be not surprised or anything, but I enjoyed it a lot more than I kind of thought I would. So if you want to check that out, it's only like 270 pages. So if 300 or more pages scares you, that one's also a pretty good read. So yeah, those are all the classics I read. That's like 6 classics. One of which was not included in my stats because it was only 4 pages and I felt weird like listing that as a book. I don't know. But regardless. And then for my translated work, I read my first manga, and I did talk about this in a previous video. But I read my first manga. I read 10 volumes of it. So it's Frieren Beyond Journey's End. I read the first 10 volumes of it. Really enjoyed it. I feel like I talked about it a lot in my reading vlog that I did 2 weeks ago now. So if you want to hear more of my thoughts on it, please go check that out. But those were my 10 translated works because manga is obviously originally written in Japanese. So yeah. And then I read 2 nonfiction books. I'll say nonfiction because both of them were treated in the context of like, this is a very real experience that someone had. But I read Woman Captain Rebel, which I did talk about in that reading blog. So I recommend you check it out. It's also just a really cool story about a woman who was like way ahead of her times. Oh my god. It's about a woman who's just like very, very ahead of her time. So very good. If you want to know more of my thoughts about that, check out that weekly reading vlog. And then I read I Know What I Saw by Linda S. Godfrey. And Linda S. Godfrey writes a lot about cryptids and urban legends and stuff like that. And this was kind of a collection of stories that people emailed her about their experiences seeing urban legends and stuff like that. So obviously it was like their experiences, it's very true to them and stuff like that. I don't know if it convinced me into being a believer. I'm a believer of certain cryptids for sure in the United States. Like in my brain it's weird to me that we have primates on every other continent other than Antarctica except for North America. So like I think I could be persuaded into Bigfoot, but I don't know if I could be persuaded into something like the Wolfman or something. I generally am open to it, but I'm also kind of a skeptic. But I did really enjoy reading it. It was actually really funny because I was listening to that audiobook when I went to the polls. It kind of the joke kind of writes itself. But yeah, also, to interrupt, go vote. If you are in the United States, early voting is like open as of when this video is gonna come out. And actual election day is on Tuesday. So if you're in the United States, please don't forget to go vote. It's very important. It's a gift to be able to have a like choice in the people we elect. So don't forget to do that, okay? But let's see. So those were my two nonfictions. Yippee skippy. I also did a few rereads this month. I reread Some Shall Break by Ellie Marney. That and None Shall Sleep are two of my favorite books that I have read. Like I've talked about not being like a huge fan of true crime, but I do love fictionalized crime. False crime, if you will. Because I do think there are aspects of true crime that are very interesting, and if it's fictional, it doesn't exploit victims or victims' families, which is really cool. So, I did read that. I just adore that book. The third one's coming out in January. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So I did reread that, and then I reread the first 7 volumes of Saga. I read it when I was a while ago, and I remember making it halfway through the series because I think it's 100 issues. And I don't know if I ever went back and like finished it. I also don't know if it's even still ongoing, but regardless, I'm gonna try and read more of that. A very good graphic novel series, very adult. So if you happen to be a youth watching this channel, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I am pro reading whatever you feel is age appropriate, but no, that one is definitely more adult focused. But yeah, so I reread those, enjoyed them both. I don't typically reread like books or series unless they're like 4 stars or above. So if you trust my judgment, you can trust me on those. And then my other highlights. These are kind of new books that I read that I was not familiar with previously and that I just so much enjoyed. So one of them was Meg Schaefer's new book, The Lost Story. I read the other book that she put out last year, 2 years ago. I think it's excellent. It's one of my, it was one of my favorite reads from last year, a definite 5 stars. And I love Meg Schaefer because she's a Louisville-based author, so I just like supporting local authors, and that's very cool. But The Lost Story, I don't know how to get into it. It's about these 2 kids that get lost in the woods for 6 months and like what happens to them and how they're found, and then it's mostly about them being adults, and one of them specifically is very good at finding lost people, and a girl approaches him to help her find her lost sister. So yeah, that's what I'm going to tell you about it. It's very good. I had a great time reading it. I also gave it 5 stars. I will be looking to buy it probably so it can go on my shelf alongside her debut novel, which name is escaping me. I'm so sorry, Meg Schaefer. I love that book, I promise you. I just can't remember the name of it. And then finally, by John Scalzi, I read the Old Man's War trilogy. It's not really a trilogy because there's like 8 books in the series, but it's a trilogy about these certain characters. But I read Old Man's War, The second one I'm blanking on, and then The Lost Colony, The Ghost Brigades. Old Man's War, The Ghost Brigades, and The Lost Colony. All of which were very good. I'm trying to get more into sci-fi and like more into, I don't know, I don't think heavy is the word I'm looking for, but like very high fantasy. Like getting into more sci-fi and high fantasy. So if you have recommendations for me, please let me know down below. But that trilogy was extraordinarily good. I was eating it up. I was excited to read it every day. I will probably purchase the 3 to go on my shelf. It's probably one of the highest compliments I can give is me saying I want to buy this book, because most of the books I get are from libraries or lent to me by friends. So if I want to buy a book, that is a very good sign. But yeah, so that is what I read. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so glad we could have this one-sided discussion, but I would love for you to make it two-sided. So if you have any thoughts about the books I talked about, please comment them down below. If you have any recommendations for me, please comment them down below. I have read quite a lot of viewer-recommended books, so I am always interested to find more. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I have to come up with things to sign off on. Oh, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you have enjoyed multiple of my videos and are looking forward to seeing more of my videos, you can give me a little subscribe and you can turn on the notification bell when I post. That would be awesome. That would be really cool. That also tells the algorithm for more people to watch my videos, and I think that would be awesome. Yeah, so what else? So read a nice fall story, I think. It's like, I don't know, like I said, it's a really good season for spooky stuff, but read like a good cozy fall novel. Go vote if you are in the United States, of course. Make sure you do a little bit of Googling, do a little bit of research. There are excellent resources to help you get ballot ready so you can know exactly who and what you're voting for, and you can make your own decisions about that. It's a really cool thing to do. So go vote if you are in the United States, or if your country is having elections anytime soon. Don't forget to vote, because that's a really important thing. And then finally, go visit and support your local libraries. I will see you all later. Goodbye!